Hi, this is Dan Shepherd from Organizer, and today I'm going to give you an in-depth tutorial of the new version of Organizer, which as of speaking is version 1.1, which we're going to ship today. I'm just opening Organizer now, and as you can see along the status bar at the bottom, when you first open it shows you the process of scanning your plugins. In the bottom right we have selected one plugin, and that's how many plugins it has found, a total of 2004. And the displayed amount is the amount without any filters applied. So this is the main window of Organizer. You've got a list view just like iTunes. You've got a top folder, a subfolder and plugin name. I'll get into what those mean in a moment. You've got a version of the plugin here, whether the plugin is 32-bit or 64-bit, the component name of the plugin, which is the actual file name of the plugin, and over here you've got the status of the plugin, whether it's locked or unlocked, which is ready to edit or not, and these are whether it's enabled in various programs you have on your system. In this case I've got Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro X10 and Ableton Live Suite installed, so those columns appear for me. And this final column here is the type of audio unit, which again I'll explain in a second as I get to the icons. So that's the general layout that you get in the main window. Up here we've got the GUI view, which is a native OS X view of the cover flow. So you can scan through plugins just like you could in Finder with the cover flow view. So this gives you a good idea if you've maybe forgotten what is the retro limiter. There you go, there's a photo of it, because there are quite a few plugins in packs you've picked up along the way that immediately the name might not spring to mind of what it exactly is, so you can get a visual indicator, and it helps when you're renaming things to put them in the right place. The sidebar here gives you a view of the top folders. So obviously I've not renamed anything or very few things here, more or less on a stock standing. So these are now the manufacturer's names. This is exactly what you'd see in Logic. You install a plugin, it's displayed under its manufacturer name, and there are all the plugins by that manufacturer. So what this will do as you go along is it will change, obviously as you change the top folder, this will now become the folders you want to organize into, such as dynamics, reverb, etc. And then as we make subfolders, they will also drop down in here, so it will give you a visual indicator of how things are going to look like in your audio unit host as you progress renaming things. You can see what's left out quickly at a glance here, and you can see exactly what's coming under each category and how you've named it, and if you think that's going to be nice and clear for you within Logic. So you can resize that window as you can, all native OS X features. So if we come to the top of the window here, these hide the windows I've mentioned. So you've got the sidebar there, which can be toggled on or off. You've got the status bar along the bottom, which I said displays sort of more important system information about any scanning status of things that's happening, which can be toggled on and off. And of course the cover flow window can be hidden, so you can have the full editing in the iTunes Finder style window there. So I'll leave those on for now. Under that you've got your filters here. So what we've got is a show all button, which is currently activated because we have nothing filtered out. These four icons correspond to this column here, which is the plugin types, and as most of you all know, there are 4 different types of plugin. Generators, which really only comes under the Apple default plugins which come with the system. It has a generator there, which you'll always find in your audio units as default, so we've left that in for now just in case that comes up. Generally though, you'll be dealing with instruments, which are obviously your synthesizers, things like that. Effects, which are your effects, your compressors, dynamics, etc. And MIDI controlled effects, which are the inputs that you can put in Logic for processing sounds through say a synthesizer filter, etc., things like that. So you can filter to just be accessing one of those types or multiple types, and they'll all show up nice and quickly in this window. As you can see, as soon as I untick things, you can show all, and it shows you all of them. The remaining 2 here are you can show and hide legacy 32-bit plugins. So if I turn that off, I've got all the 32-bit plugins hidden now, and I've only got 64-bit plugins, which will also include any 32 Lives resurrected plugins. I don't think I've got any to show you in this system at the moment, but they will actually show up as 32 Lives, and Organise recognise. Oh, there we go. There's some 32 Lives, some old components I was testing of Abbey Road, Softube's plugins. So those are there. You can see they'll show up like that, and you can also hide the locked plugins, which currently I've locked almost everything on the system, so that's hidden nearly everything. So I'll turn everything on again, just show all, turn everything on. Across here you've got a search box which works as you'd expect, everything else does in OS 10. Extracting views here you can see coming up, which is quite handy because that tells you when Organise is working in the background to extract these GUIs. As you move along, it'll extract some views. A little tip: if a GUI hasn't extracted properly for whatever reason, if you double click on it, it will attempt to extract that GUI again. Once they're extracted, they're cached, so there's no need to keep going backwards and forwards. They'll be there instantly every time you open the client. So if I just now come to the actions menu, this is what's new in version 1.1, and I'll explain each of these features and give an example of them. So we've got, first of all, as from the beginning, first version, export and import. So what you can do with these is, once you've made all your changes and you're happy, you can export those changes into a file, save them in your Dropbox or somewhere safe, and at any point you can then import those changes back to another version of Organizer or a version in another studio. Now, one note about this is these changes will only apply if you've unlocked the plugins first, which means if they're editable in the window here. As you can see, you can't edit locked plugins, so that applies to import. If those plugins are locked and you try to import the changes and you're wondering why it's not worked, it's because you're trying to import changes to plugins that are locked and Organizer can't write to them. So bear that in mind if you're exporting and importing. Underneath that, we've got these new options. Some are new, some are just reworded from the last version, so I'll run through each one. You can roll back to the last change made to, and it'll either be the selected plugin. So if I select BX Boom, it will tell you BX Boom, and that's an auto-map wrapped plugin that I've got there, or every possible plugin. What that does is when you quit Organizer and reopen it, that session is saved. So if I rename this to be in a certain category and then at a later date I rename it and decide actually I want to undo that, come into this menu, we'll roll back just one change, the last change. If you want to go further than that and roll back to the original name of the plugin, the next menu here is what that's for. Again, it will show you the selected plugin, so you can roll back just for the selected plugin, or you can roll back for all possible plugins, which is everything that's unlocked, everything that Organizer can write to. Just to show you a few multiple select plugins, I'll hide that menu for now, it will show you you've got that plugin and 3 other plugins to apply this to. If we go down again further here, we've got the unlock menu. So plugins must be unlocked for Organizer to work with them. At the moment, that works by copying them to the user library. Their Organizer can work with the plugins, and at a later date, which we'll come to in a moment, you'll be able to move any possible changes back to the system folder, which will free up your disk space, but I'll run through the pros and cons of that in a moment. First of all, this is lock-in. Again, you can select one plugin. This plugin is locked. I can select it, I can unlock that one plugin, or I can lock all possible plugins on the system. You can also unlock by clicking the unlock icon here. When you click that, Organizer will explain what unlocking means, which is what I've just said here, and again you can unlock that single plugin or you can unlock every possible plugin. I'll unlock all the plugins now just to show you it runs through that, and you can see unlocking appears down here, so it's just copying these to my user folder. Now the pros and cons of this: you can run everything from the user folder, it won't affect current projects, nothing, no audio host cares whether those plugins are in the user folder or system folder as stock. It will always preference the user folder, so nothing will change to previous projects for them being copied. The pro to this is if you have a shared computer, you can copy the plugins there and you can rename them, run them from the user library, and it won't affect global users. So you could have a different setup per user. The other pro is that if you don't have admin access control, you don't need it. You can unlock them. As you see, no password has popped up here. I can unlock these and I can work and arrange them. The downside to putting them in their library, of course, is disk space, because it will copy the plugins over to the user library, and there are very few, probably 0.5%. In fact, here we go, it's popped up to show me. These plugins are the ones that we've identified. I've got them installed in this system. If you have them installed, it will tell you these plugins must be moved back to the system folder once you've edited to ensure they run properly. So at the moment we know it's the Neve Potico plugins, and it's also Sugar Bytes, all of their system. So that's the next option that we'll be coming on to now anyway. So again, you can run everything else apart from those plugins from the user folder, and you'll have you don't need admin access, and you will be able to just apply your changes to that user. If you move them back to the system folder, then it will affect every user on the system. You will save disk space because Organise will remove them then from your user folder. The reason we do this instead of editing them in place in the first place is because we can use more modern APIs, things that aren't depreciated by Apple. When editing the plugins, we can do it from the user folder nice and quickly and safely, and then it gives you the option anyway of what you want to do. So say I've made these plugins and you can move them back to the system folder. So you can move back individual plugins by highlighting them, or you can move back all plugins, which will, once you've made your changes, move them all back. So I would advise most people would probably want to move their plugins back to the system folder once they've completed. It will free up your disk space. If you've got admin access and you don't share the computer, that is the way 99% of people I think will want to go. So an action at the end, again, this is not necessary. You can view your changes as you go along. You don't need to apply anything in Organizer for changes to appear. Once they're unlocked and you edit them, if I change this now to top folder and press enter, that is it. That change is now applied. That plugin has now got a top folder of top folder. That's what it's called. So when you're in Logic, in the manufacturer's list in your audio units, it would now appear under top folder. So I can show you this. I'm going to roll back to its original name, roll back, and you can see it's renamed back to how it was before. So there's no need to apply any changes, but what you might want to do at the end is move them to the system folder so that you can save disk space. And if you've got admin access, I think it's the reliable thing to do. The final couple of options here, if for any reason you've got a problem with a plugin that is new or hasn't been tested, I think it's going to be highly unlikely now because we've got many mechanisms built in that should work with almost everything you come across. But just in case you do, and it's critical that you need that plugin for a session, or it's causing a crash or anything of that matter, come into here, highlight the plugin, and just like everything else in the menu, you can highlight one or multiple plugins, or you can do all plugins if you panic and you want to go back to an original state. Now this is further than rolling back to the original name, which just affects literally your named edits. This goes back to an absolute stock state. It will, if you've got locked plugins in the system folder that have been edited, it will put them back to an original state. It will change anything that you've done in the user library folder if they've only been installed there. It will literally put everything back to an original state as if you hadn't done anything at all in the first place. Everything's completely backed up, and this will get you back to there. Or you can do it on a per plugin basis. So for whatever matter, this is your sort of panic menu, which you probably won't really need to use. I can't see you needing to use it anymore, but if there is just something new that comes out or something very obscure that's not been tested, that's where you'll be able to get it back. And finally, you can reload all the plugins here. So if you install something, you can just reload things here. Just click that. Organizer gives you a quick scan as if you've reopened the program without having to close and reopen it. It's just a quick way of refreshing any changes. I've used it, to be honest, as we move along. I've installed the plugin, and instead of having to open and close Organizer, I've just refreshed it. So as you can see now, say we've made some changes, you'll actually get a pop-up opening Organizer again to move things to the system folder. You can click to not see this message again if you're quite happy with them being in the user library, but it will warn you each time you know, you can move everything over with the click of a button when you open the program. We'll just cancel that for now because we haven't made any changes anyway. We've just unlocked all the plugins ready to edit. So I'll show you now how you can go about editing. For instance, we'll pick something from the list. I'll go to waves because waves is a nice, quick, easy thing to edit. So we've got the API here. So most people will come along and they'll go, okay, I don't want this to be under the category of waves anymore. I'm Logic, I want to access it through my compressor menu. So we'll rename it to Dynamics for argument's sake. And of course there's a mono version here, so you'll want to do the same with the mono version. Dynamics. And you want to give it a subfolder of compressor. Again, compressor, and as you'll see, C pops up. It will automatically guess what the rest of it is. You can just press enter straight away, one letter. As you get a few categories going, this really speeds things up. I find that you only need to edit things. Of course, you can select multiple plugins. You could have done both of those at the same time. So you change this to, we'll swap them around just to show you how to do it. Compressor, and we'll subfolder of Dynamics. I know that makes no sense, but just to show you, you've got multiple plugins, you just click save and it changes that to compressor and it's changed that to Dynamics. And you've got a little drop down menu here which has all of your changes or top level folders so far. So we'll put that back to Dynamics and we'll put this back to compressor. Click save, save. So of course what you can do is you can select multiple plugins at once. So you can use the Apple key and you can select all your compressors and you could put them all into the same subfolder, compressor, for instance. Those obviously aren't compressors, but I'm just showing you that's what you could do to speed up your editing, and the same with top folder. And of course I've got 2,000 plugins here, so it's a big task from the beginning to get started with your naming conventions and things like that. Most of you won't have Waves 7, 8 and 9 and 9.2 all installed on the same system as I do for testing, but so you'll have a slightly more confined list than this, but that's what you'll do. You'll go in, you'll start at changing your manufacturer names to the top folder that you want, and then your subfolder will be the second drop down list in Logic. So word of warning, Ableton doesn't support subfolders. If you plan on just using Ableton, don't use them at all. If you plan on using Logic and Ableton, I would still advise at the moment not using subfolders. It's a limitation of Ableton. We're working on various things to work around that, but Ableton does handle things very differently to most audio units hosts, which is a shame, but there are going to be some workarounds hopefully in the future. Now of course, as well as the top folder and the subfolder, you can of course change the plugin name itself. I find this is useful sometimes because perhaps you've got your own familiar names for a plugin, or you don't like the developer's name, or of course in some cases the plugin name may be just some letters, and you may want to, once you've changed the top folder and removed the manufacturer's name, perhaps put that in the plugin name in abbreviated form, something just so it's a little bit more recognizable in your list. For me, I find that a lot of plugins have got really nice marketing names, nice, you know, such as this Amber, but in a recording session, when you've got thousands, you may forget exactly which plugin is which, so you might have your own name, or you might want to even rename it to what emulation that plugin is. So of course you can go into plugin and you can name it whatever you want. For instance, I could put this as F-Expansion Amber if I wanted, and of course I'd put the top thing as folder. Now one limitation to remember, and this is part of the audio unit standard, is you can't have more than 31 characters combined between subfolder and plugin name. That is seen as one unit by everything. So if you use a subfolder name, just remember that you can't go over 31 characters. It still gives you quite a lot of room. We'll probably be able to fit in analog there. Yeah, we can. So you could go, most subfolders will fit in there, but if you do go over the characters, you'll get a pop-up just telling you that it didn't apply because you've gone over 31 characters. So you can adjust that. You'll see you get a pen icon if the change hasn't gone through. So for any reason things like that hasn't quite edited, you'll get the pen icon. Just edit it back and you notice it's gone back to the unlock icon and that's applied. So that gives you an idea of how to rename the top folder and subfolder, and I can show you here, if I select both of them, how I can go back to a pre-Organizer state. It will restore, and there we go, they're locked and they're back to their original state. And I've just clicked off the list there, but they're back to their original state, locked and unedited. There we go. You can see them at the top, locked and unedited. Okay, so I'm going to start organising a few plugins, and I'm going to be using Logic 10. So I'll hide the 32-bit plugins, seeing as they don't apply to me. Get straight to 64-bit so that I'm not editing anything which I shouldn't be, that won't show up in Logic when I show you the changes. I'm not going to do a full detailed organisation of things, obviously. It's make a very boring video. You just need to get the gist of how to do things which you may already have. And what I'll do is I'll go to Native Instruments. There we go. If I take that in, we will get straight to the Native Instruments plugins, and there you can see them all laid out. I'll just make this GUI window slightly smaller. And what I'll do is I'll start with the vintage VC160s, the emulations here, and I will rename them into a dynamics category. So we'll take dynamics, and I'll show you that you can edit these two at once, and you know that they're all going in dynamics. Save that, and I'm going to put them all into a category called vintage comp. You can name anything, whatever you want, whatever naming conventions. You might want to sit down and work it out before you start. That is now enabled in all my audio units hosts I have. So let's just open Logic and show you how that arrives. Type it in properly. Now, as you can see, there's no scanning of audio units from Logic there. There's no re-looking at the audio units. It's automatically updated by Organizer. And here we go, we're in Logic on a project that's already open. Some messages about my MIDI interface there, and some plugins open from before. Now remember, these plugins have existed in a project before. We've unlocked them in Organizer, and we have left them as they are, but they're all unlocked. They're all copied to the user folder, and I have made one change to Dynamics Vintage Comp. And there you can see our Native Instruments compressors. Pick one and it loads just fine. There we go. So what I will show you while we're here is, you can see this plugin is loaded with no GUI. Now this is a Sugar Bytes plugin, and you may have remembered before I said some plugins need moving back to the system folder. Some plugins being mainly Sugar Bytes and the Neve Portico plugins, whereas everything else is currently in the user folder. Okay, some of them are not renamed, most of them are not renamed, but they open, work perfectly fine. So I'll show you how we can fix that problem, and I'll also rename a Sugar Bytes plugin. So we'll just quit Logic, we won't save that project, and we'll go to Sugar Bytes. And here we can see all the Sugar Bytes plugins. That was actually Scilop that was open. So we'll rename Scilop, we'll put it in synth, and we'll leave it in synth, we won't do a subfolder. And in fact, we shall rename some of the others as well into synth. And there we go. And what we'll do is we'll now select all four of those, close our modify window, and we will move these to the system folder. Just those plugins. So your admin password pops up, enter the password, and there we go. These are now locked, but with changes intact, and they're moved to the system folder. So if we now open Logic again, I keep typing it in wrong, there we go, it's Logic. Again, no scanning of the audio units. It's going to load that project that was open a moment ago, only this time you can see Scilop has its GUI window just fine. And not only that, but if we go into here, well, in fact, it's already open there, isn't it? We can go in to synth, and there it is there, and there are the other Sugarbytes plugins that we open. We'll swap it for one of those. There we go, GUI intact, everything working perfectly fine. So as I say, moving back to your system folder is safer for some plugins, but 99.9% will run fine from your user library. It's totally up to you what you want to do with those plugins. So if I quit Logic again now, I won't save that project again. You can see these are now locked, so they're uneditable unless I unlock them, which I can do. I can unlock the single plugin or every plugin again. Of course, the changes stay intact. It's letting me know, and of course I've organised to the Sugarbytes directory, so those plugins have disappeared. If we want, we can go back to all our plugins, and here you can see, as I mentioned before, we've got some renamed compressor, and we've got synth in here as well now. There it is, and you can show what's under there. There are our plugins, so we can go to Scilab and we've unlocked it for editing. There you go, you can see it's not greyed out. We can now rename that plugin from this menu however we want. I'll leave it as synth for now. So the ideal way would be to go through all your plugins, rename them all, and really do a move to system folder for every possible plugin if that's what you'd like to do. I can show you here. I can select this plugin and I can unlock. I can roll back Cyclop to its original name, and there you go. It's back to Sugarbytes, back to its original name. If you didn't like what you did, of course, say we've renamed all of these plugins, we'll do a really destructive thing of selecting loads of plugins and we'll modify them all with a top folder of test, and we'll save. This will take a little bit of time because we're editing a few hundred plugins at once. There we go, modify 226 plugins. They're all called test. Let's open Logic again. It's going to be a very ugly arrangement, but we just showing you how quickly and easily you can edit those plugins. Again, that's gone back because we've unlocked Cyclop and renamed it without moving it back to the system folder. But if we go into the audio units, you can see test, and all the plugins have been renamed under this category of test. That all work perfectly fine from there. But what we really want to do is close Logic, don't save. We've renamed well over 200 plugins here, so to show you, I will go to move every possible plugin to the system folder. We'll do that. It's asking me for my admin password. You can see at the bottom here, it's just moving those to the system folder, so we just wait for that to finish. And there we go, the plugins have all moved over. They're all locked, but they're all with their changes intact, which were terrible. Test folder. But I will just show you. So imagine we've made all the changes that we wanted, and we open Logic, and everything's neatly organised the way that you've worked out beforehand. We can open this old project. You'll see that Cyclop is there with its GUI, its Logic 1 messages, and everything is of course under its test folder, and of course everything is fine. So finally, I'll just show you, of course, those changes are not what we want, not what I want at all. And so I'm going to go to the actions menu and I'm going to restore everything back to default. This will restore everything back to a pre-Organizer state, all changes reverted. It asks for my admin password, we'll press OK, we'll leave it to restore the plugins back to default. You can see the names just changing in the list there. And it does a quick restore, refresh rather, once it's finished, and there we go. Everything is back to a pre-Organizer state. There's no test folder, nothing. Everything is as it would be when you first bought the program. I'll open Logic. And again, it'll open this old project. Where you can see everything's back to normal. There are no renames, there's no test folder, there's no dynamics folder, everything is as it was. And we can load up plugins however we want. So that's a showing of Organizer's features. Any questions, you can email us questions@Auganizer. I think it's quite straightforward from here how you go about organising everything the way you want. Let's talk about these buttons which I mentioned on the side here. You can actually enable and disable plugins in specific audio units hosts as and how you wish. So for instance, I can tick this button and that plugin is now disabled solely in Logic. Now of course in Logic you can do that in its audio units manager, but it gives you a little bit more flexibility to do it all in one place, get everything nice and neat and tidy. We can do it in Live, we can do it for Final Cut, we can do it for GarageBand if that's installed, we can do it for the different versions individually of Logic as well. So that's quite a handy way to make sure you've got your plugins in the applications you want, showing how you want them to show. And this column corresponds to these buttons up here. If we just show the instruments, you can see you get the instrument icon. You can of course sort by instrument, you can sort by top folder name, you can sort by subfolder name, plugin name, component names, you can arrange by 32-bit, 64-bit, you can even, if you want, arrange by version number. But you can of course hide some columns as well. So if you use Ableton and you don't want to use the subfolder, you can hide the subfolder from the view, you can hide the component, get this stripped down to what you want to work with. So hopefully that's given you a good oversight. I apologise, it's very much done on the fly, probably a little bit rambly and not as concise as it should be, but I have very much just gone through this on the fly and try to work with you and show you how to do all the options that I can remember to show you. Any of the little tips and tricks I can think of, one of them is if you highlight a plugin such as this, leave the mouse on it for a moment, you'll get a pop-up there about the plugin telling you its name, what type of plugin it is, and most important bit of information there is the location of it. And also you can now double click on that component and it will load it up in the library there, in the finder there, so you can get straight to that plugin. You can delete it or you can do whatever, but that will take you straight to the plugin if you need to do that for whatever reason. Any other questions, you can email questions@organizer.com and we'll be sure to get back to you as soon as possible. If you do find any bugs at all, any incompatibilities, I would have thought version 1.1 is going to really cover 99.9% of things. We've tried it with all sorts, but if you do find anything, you can always get us on bugs@organizer.com and we'll make sure to tackle those as soon as possible and push out any incremental updates that need to be. Enjoy Organizer, organise your plugins the way you want, and hopefully that improves your workflow. Thanks a lot for listening. Enjoy.